Ethan Bennett stood in the dressing room of WNYC, staring at his reflection in the mirror. He looked confident, his usual poised self. But deep down, he knew that confidence was only skin deep. Today marked the first week of his promotion to television news anchor, yet the new role hadn't brought the satisfaction he had anticipated. As a top journalism graduate, Ethan had made a name for himself in college with several in-depth reports that garnered significant attention. His dream was always to become a journalist who could expose social injustices, to delve into the streets and tell the stories that were often ignored. But over time, Ethan found himself increasingly trapped in the glamorous world of television. His work began to feel more like a performance, reading carefully crafted scripts, hosting superficial interviews, further and further away from the journalistic ideals he once held dear. That day, Ethan had just wrapped up an interview about local community development, feeling a deep sense of frustration. These polished reports barely scratched the surface of real issues. They simply put a shiny veneer over political agendas. As he prepared to leave the dressing room, the phone suddenly rang, interrupting his thoughts. "Ethan, could you come to Rebecca's office for a moment?" It was Nancy, the station's HR manager. Her voice was as calm as ever. But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Walking into Rebecca Davis's office, Ethan noticed the sharp, no-nonsense look on his boss's face. Rebecca was WNYC's executive producer and Ethan's direct superior, known for her strict demeanor. She motioned for him to sit down and handed him a file. "Ethan, we have a new program project," she said, getting straight to the point. "The weather anchor position has opened up, and we need someone reliable to take over." Ethan was stunned. He had expected to be assigned to a more challenging task, or at least a chance to go out on a reporting assignment. But the weather? The news left him speechless. He almost thought he had heard her wrong. "Rebecca, I'm not really into weather reporting, and it doesn't quite align with my career goals." Ethan tried to keep his tone steady, but his disappointment was unmistakable. Rebecca looked up, her sharp eyes fixing on him. "Ethan, I know this isn't what you envisioned, but this isn't just any weather position. It's for a brand new program. It will offer more freedom and creative space. The key is how you define it." There was a note of encouragement in her voice. "This is an opportunity, a chance for you to show what you can do." Ethan took a deep breath, his mind racing with thoughts. A weather anchor? It sounded like a step backward, but Rebecca's words planted a seed of doubt in his mind. If he could make something of this show, maybe it wouldn't be so bad after all. "I understand, Rebecca." He finally nodded, trying to sound more resolute. "I'll seriously consider this opportunity." "Good." Rebecca smiled slightly, a hint of approval in her expression. "I'm looking forward to seeing how you bring new life to this program." Leaving the office, Ethan's emotions were mixed. The opportunity was disappointing, yet there was an unexpected flicker of excitement. Perhaps this seemingly unideal job was the turning point he needed in his life. But could he seize this moment and steer his dreams in a new direction? Ethan wasn't sure, but he was determined to try. He stood at the entrance of the station, looking up at the overcast sky. New York's weather was always full of surprises, much like his current state of mind. Ethan Bennett sat in the WNYC studio, nervously staring at the weather charts in front of him. It was his first week as the station's weather anchor, and tonight's forecast was particularly crucial. According to the meteorological reports, a heavy storm was expected to hit New York City, but its intensity and path were still uncertain. "Ethan, are you ready?" The voice of the director, Tom, came through his earpiece, snapping him out of his thoughts. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "Ready?" he replied, standing up and walking over to the camera. The lights shone on his face, and the red light on the camera blinked on. On screen, he looked as confident as ever, his finger gliding over the weather map as he explained the upcoming conditions to the viewers. He spoke of the advancing cold front and the possibility of some showers, but he deliberately downplayed the risk of a severe storm, hoping to ease the audience's concerns. There might be some rain tonight, but nothing too serious. It should just be a light drizzle, he said with a reassuring smile to the camera, feeling a sense of relief. He trusted his judgment, believing the storm wouldn't be as bad as predicted. However, as night fell, the sky began to darken ominously. The temperature plummeted, winds howled, and the storm unleashed itself on the city with a ferocity that no one had anticipated. Ethan's phone started buzzing nonstop, alerts pouring in. This sudden violent storm had thrown the entire city into chaos. Streets were flooded, power outages swept across neighborhoods, and countless residents were trapped in their homes, completely unprepared for such an intense downpour. Social media exploded with angry voices, many blaming Ethan for not issuing a strong enough warning. Even the mayor's office released a statement, urging citizens to be cautious and indirectly criticizing the station's weather forecast. A cold sweat ran down Ethan's back. He had never felt such a weight on his shoulders. This wasn't just a simple mistake. It was a catastrophic failure that threatened his professional reputation. He could almost hear the viewers cursing him at their screens and imagine the skepticism from his colleagues in the media. The next morning, when Ethan walked into the office, he was met with an atmosphere of palpable tension. The usually bustling workplace was eerily quiet, with coworkers avoiding eye contact, as if he were the source of the disaster. "Ethan, in my office." Rebecca's voice rang out from across the room, carrying an unmistakable note of anger. Ethan had known this moment was inevitable. Without a word, he followed Rebecca into her office, where she closed the door and turned to face him, her expression stern. "Ethan, do you understand what happened last night?" Rebecca's voice was devoid of any warmth, each word carefully measured. Ethan nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "I know. I made a mistake. I underestimated the severity of the storm." "Mistake?" Rebecca repeated, her tone laced with icy sarcasm. "Ethan, this wasn't just a mistake. It was a disastrous misjudgment. Do you realize what this means for our show and for your career?" Ethan felt a sharp pang in his chest. He knew Rebecca was right. This failure had not only cost him the trust of the audience, but also made him question his own competence. "You have 1 month to turn this around." Rebecca's voice broke through his thoughts. "If you can't prove that you're capable of handling this job, I'll have to consider moving you back to your previous position. Or worse, you might lose your job altogether." Ethan's heart sank. 1 month might seem like a generous amount of time, but he knew he had to act immediately. Regaining the audience's trust wouldn't be easy, especially after such a significant blunder. But what troubled him even more was the nagging doubt about whether he was truly suited for this role, whether he even understood the real purpose of his career anymore. After leaving Rebecca's office, Ethan headed downstairs to a small cafe and ordered a black coffee. He sat in the corner, reflecting on his career so far. From a passionate journalism student to a weather anchor, grappling with failure, Ethan felt as though he had lost his way on a long and winding road. He had been so focused on achieving success that he had forgotten the original dream that had driven him. As night fell again, the New York skyline remained as breathtaking as ever, but Ethan's mood was as dark as the storm that had raged the previous evening. He knew that he didn't just need to win back the trust of his audience. He needed to rediscover his place in this industry and find the reason that would make him want to stand in front of the camera every day, speaking to thousands of viewers. Ethan sat in his dimly lit apartment, staring out at the gray, overcast sky. The days of continuous rain seemed to mirror his inner turmoil and uncertainty. He kept replaying Rebecca's ultimatum in his mind, but still didn't know how to respond. The once passionate young journalist, eager to uncover the truth, now felt lost in the glittering but shallow world of television. Just then, the doorbell rang. Ethan frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone at this hour. He walked to the door and opened it, only to find no one there. As he glanced down, he noticed an unmarked envelope lying on the doormat. He picked up the envelope, which bore only a simple inscription, "To Ethan Bennett." A flicker of curiosity crossed his mind as he opened it. Inside was a piece of yellowed paper with a neatly written message. "Ethan Bennett, do you remember why you chose this path? Somewhere in this city, there are people enduring silent suffering, their stories untold. The microphone in your hand is not just a tool to report the weather. It can also be a weapon to reveal the truth. Will you use your voice to give those forgotten people a chance to be heard?" Ethan's heart stirred as he read the letter. The anonymous note felt like a hammer blow, striking at the ideals he had long buried. The content of the letter not only intrigued him, but also reignited his passion for journalism. It felt like a call from destiny, reminding him not to forget his original dream. The next day, Ethan returned to the station. He decided to use his platform to subtly guide viewers' attention toward the social issues mentioned in the letter. He realized that, while he was now a weather anchor, that didn't mean he couldn't inject his own unique perspective into his work. In fact, this might be a fresh and effective way to bring those ignored voices to a wider audience. That evening, during the weather forecast, Ethan tried a new approach. While predicting an upcoming cold front, he mentioned that some of New York's homeless might face a harsh night on the streets due to the plummeting temperatures. His tone was calm, as if he were merely discussing the weather, but the underlying message invited viewers to think more deeply. Over the following days, Ethan continued to weave similar messages into his reports. How heavy rain might overwhelm the drainage systems in poorer neighborhoods, or how extreme weather conditions could severely impact the homeless and low-income families. These subtle hints gradually caught the audience's attention. People started talking about Ethan's forecasting style on social media. Some praised his innovation, while others were curious about why he had suddenly begun highlighting these issues. Even a few of his colleagues expressed interest and admiration, noting how he had transformed the weather forecast from mere numbers and data into something connected with real social concerns. However, Ethan was also aware that this approach could spark controversy and might even draw criticism from his superiors. But he had already made up his mind. Even if it meant taking risks, he would continue down this path. He realized that this might be the very intention behind the anonymous letter, to help him find a new direction in his career and redefine his role. One evening, while working late in the office to prepare for the next day's broadcast, Ethan's phone buzzed with a new message. He unlocked his phone to find a brief text. "You're doing well, but this is just the beginning. The real story is still waiting to be uncovered." Ethan's heart raced. It was clearly the author of the anonymous letter reaching out to him again. The mention of the real story gave him a profound sense of urgency. He realized that he couldn't just stop at surface-level hints and reminders. He needed to dig deeper, to expose the truths that had been hidden. Ethan sat at his desk, his mind racing. He knew that this choice would alter the course of his career. Whatever the outcome, he decided he would no longer shy away from his dreams. He would use the platform he had been given to truly give a voice to those who had none. As the night deepened outside, rain pattered against the window, like a drumbeat urging him forward. Ethan's eyes gleamed with a newfound determination. He knew the road ahead might be filled with challenges, but he was ready to face them head-on. In just a few weeks, Ethan's show became more popular than ever before. His unique approach to weather forecasting sparked widespread discussion among viewers and the media alike. People were no longer just paying attention to the weather. They were also beginning to think about how these weather conditions affected the lives of vulnerable groups. The station's ratings steadily climbed, even surpassing expectations, and this gave Ethan a sense of satisfaction, as if his efforts were finally paying off. However, not everyone approved of this new direction. Rebecca Davis, Ethan's boss, grew increasingly uneasy about the path the show was taking. As a meticulous television producer, she was more focused on the show's data and market performance than on the potential social issues it highlighted. One day, Rebecca called Ethan into her office. "Ethan, I have to admit, your show has been getting a lot of attention lately," Rebecca began, her tone tinged with hesitation. "But I'm concerned that you're bringing too much of your personal agenda into the program. After all, this is a weather forecast, not a social issues segment." Ethan felt a wave of tension, though he had anticipated this conversation. Taking a deep breath, he replied, "Rebecca, I understand your concerns, but I believe that weather forecasts aren't just about predicting the weather. They impact people's lives, especially those who are struggling on the margins. I'm just trying to make more people aware of these issues." Rebecca looked at him, her expression conflicted. She knew that Ethan's intentions were good, but she also worried that this approach might compromise the long-term stability of the show. After a moment of silence, she sighed and said, "All right, Ethan. I'll give you some leeway, but please be careful. This is still a job, and we have a responsibility to our audience." Ethan nodded, relieved, despite the underlying warning in Rebecca's words. He knew he couldn't afford to let this opportunity slip away. Meanwhile, Ethan hadn't forgotten about the anonymous letter. He became more determined to uncover the identity of its author. Each time he hinted at social issues during the show, he would receive a new anonymous message. The information in these messages grew more detailed, guiding him to specific areas and communities within the city. Ethan realized that the author was someone with a deep understanding of the city's problems, likely a community activist working quietly behind the scenes. Ethan decided to visit these places himself. He spent his off hours investigating the neighborhoods mentioned in the letters. He saw rundown homes in impoverished areas, neglected infrastructure, and families struggling with daily hardships. Each visit fueled his sense of responsibility, and he knew he had to bring these hidden truths to light. During one such visit, Ethan finally met the person who had been contacting him. It was a rainy afternoon when Ethan followed the latest anonymous tip to an old rundown neighborhood on the city's outskirts. This area had long been neglected, with many residents living in poverty. At a dilapidated community center, Ethan met Grace Walker, a woman in her mid-30s with a resilient expression. Her eyes held a mix of weariness and determination. Ethan immediately recognized her as the community activist who had been sending him the letters. "You're Ethan Bennett, aren't you?" Grace asked, her voice low and steady. Ethan nodded, filled with curiosity and admiration. "Yes, I'm Ethan. And you're Grace, right? You've been writing to me all this time?" Grace nodded, her expression calm. "That's right. I've been following your show and seeing the changes you've made. You've done some important things with your platform, but you need to understand it's not enough. There are still too many truths being hidden, too many voices going unheard in this city." Ethan was struck by Grace's straightforwardness and resolve. He realized that this woman had been tirelessly advocating for the voiceless, fighting for social justice in the shadows, and the platform he held might be the perfect vehicle to bring these stories to the public. Grace took Ethan to more communities, showing him the neglected corners of the city. She told him about the struggles of the homeless, the challenges faced by impoverished families, and the failures of government services. Each story deeply moved Ethan, and he became determined to bring these stories to light. Back at the station, Ethan began planning a special segment, one that would fully expose the social issues he had uncovered. He knew this would be a risky move, not just for his career, but for his principles. But he was no longer hesitant. He was committed to revealing the truth, no matter the challenges that lay ahead. When the special segment aired, Ethan felt a wave of nervousness. This wasn't just a bold change in the style of his show. It was also a testament to his dual identity as both a journalist and a weather anchor. As the program unfolded, viewers were introduced to the often overlooked corners of the city and the harsh realities faced by those living there. The segment sparked a huge response, with widespread discussions in the media and among the public. Even the city government took notice and began addressing some of the issues highlighted. Standing in his office at the station, Ethan watched as the internet buzzed with comments and reports, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment that he had never experienced before. He knew this was only the beginning. There were still many stories to be told, many truths to be uncovered. Grace had become his steadfast ally, and together they were determined to continue bringing more social issues into the public eye. However, Ethan was also aware that he had entered a more sensitive and potentially dangerous realm. The road ahead might be even more challenging, but he was ready to keep unveiling the forgotten truths. In the days following the airing of the special segment, Ethan Bennett's life changed almost entirely. His phone rang constantly, flooded with messages from all directions, support from viewers, praise from colleagues, and even responses from government officials. On social media, Ethan's program became a hot topic, with people everywhere discussing the social issues he had brought to light. For the first time, Ethan felt a deep sense of accomplishment, not just because of the show's success, but because he had finally found what he truly wanted to do. One weekend after the segment aired, Ethan returned to the rundown community center and found Grace Walker. She was busy organizing a volunteer meal service for the homeless. When Grace saw Ethan walk in, she smiled and put down her work to greet him. "The show was great, Ethan," Grace said, her voice still low and steady, but this time with a hint of satisfaction. "Thank you, Grace," Ethan replied sincerely. "I couldn't have done it without your help. You showed me those forgotten corners of the city." Grace nodded, a hint of reflection in her eyes. "These problems have been around for a long time, but few people are willing to pay attention. I just did what I had to. But you used your influence to bring these stories to the public. You've helped a lot of people, Ethan." Ethan shook his head slightly. "Actually, it was you who made me realize what I should really be doing. You helped me rediscover the journalist I once wanted to be." They walked outside the community center, where the sunlight broke through the clouds and shone on the rundown streets, as if signaling a new hope. Ethan watched the volunteers working busily at the meal service and the homeless waiting in line for food, feeling a powerful sense of responsibility rising within him. "Grace, I want to keep doing more with you," Ethan said, his voice firm. "Not just another show, but a long-term platform. We can use it to help more people understand these issues and push for change." Grace looked at him, her eyes sparkling with a newfound determination. "Are you serious? This won't be easy. We'll face a lot of pressure and challenges." Ethan nodded without hesitation. I'm ready. This isn't just a job anymore. It's a mission. We can create an entirely new show, maybe even a cross-media platform, specifically focused on the social issues that mainstream media often overlooks. We can use our voices to help those who can't speak for themselves. Grace was silent for a moment, then smiled. She extended her hand to Ethan, as if this handshake marked the beginning of their shared journey. All right, Ethan, count me in. From that moment on, their collaboration began. Ethan and Grace co-founded a new platform called Sky of Wishes, which combined television programming, social media, and community initiatives to expose social injustices and advocate for social justice. This platform was not just about reporting the news. It was a space for people to actively engage and propose solutions. Sky of Wishes quickly garnered widespread attention and support. Many people were moved by Ethan and Grace's story and joined their cause, contributing to the effort to improve society. Ethan continued to use his unique weather forecasting style to guide viewers' attention to social issues, while Grace organized various activities in the community, directly helping those in need. Their efforts gradually made a tangible impact. The city government began taking action to improve infrastructure in impoverished neighborhoods, and businesses and charities responded by providing resources to help the homeless and low-income families. Ethan and Grace's story spread far and wide, and their mission began to expand across the country, even attracting international attention. Sky of Wishes became more than just a name. It embodied the ideal they both pursued, a more just and better world. They believed that as long as they kept going, the sky would grow ever wider, accommodating more wishes and creating more miracles.